read about the greens.
But I can wing it.
Would you like us to publish a couple more?
Who's,
I'll look at
okay,
my phone.
Robert
I'll just guess.
Kringle, right? Did I say that
You
right?
won't have to wait.
Yeah. Where's Patrick?
We all set? Alrighty. And the time is 6:30. We are ready to begin. With us tonight is Patrick Knight, Mike Roth, Craig Schulte, Aaron Carlson, Ben Peters, myself, and Michael Gary, along with City Attorney Robert Kringle. And do we have Kim Dunsmore? Yes. So that along with an audience this evening. So with that, we will turn it over to the open forum. Is anyone here for open forum this evening? All right. If you'd like to come and just make sure the mic gets close enough to you or the chair gets close to the mic or whatever.
Somehow.
Whatever works for you.
Yep, and then just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Debbie Lamuska, and I am here because I heard about what's going on with Harbor Light, Harbor View Apartments. I am a resident of Grand Marais, and I do live at Harbor View Apartments. Wrong one? Okay. And so, you know, this is kind of coming as a big surprise to the people who live there. It's happening all over in our community. It seems like this community is becoming an elitist community. There are families there with children who are in school. There are people in wheelchairs. There are people, elderly people. And the waiting list in this town is anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years for another place. And I don't know that there's any recourse, but we seem to be continuing to move towards everything geared towards comparisons with the Twin Cities. There's not a lot of people who have grew up or lived here all their life who are not business owners who can afford the rent structures up here any longer. And I know that there's a lot of plans for housing, but with the one roof housing that was built, that is not affordable for a lot of people. Being a former Forest Service employee, I know that this year that they were short-staffed immensely, as most of our businesses are, because people want to take jobs, but there's no housing. And many things seem to take forever up here. And I just, a lot of locals are moving out of the community because they are priced out of the homes that they've had. And it's not only Grand Marais, I see it in other small communities as well. Some communities are taking lodging tax money and using that to help with building affordable housing. I think there needs to be a little bit more creativity, and I think that we need more transparency because we've seen things in the past that have happened that I don't feel people always knew they had enough notice or there was enough publicity. And it's just sad to see the character of Grand Marais changing. It's becoming a cookie cutter community like any other small town, and we're losing our identity. So thank you for listening.
All right.
Thank you. Anyone else for open forum this evening? Everyone else is here for a specific item. All right, very good. Next is the consent agenda. Any questions on meeting minutes or bills or anything else on that one? Would anyone like to make an emotion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Everyone's mic is aimed properly.
There we go.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. That, and next up are two items from the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So Mr. Gary or Mr. Peters are.
Yeah, I
Ben?
hope, we assume that you've gone through and read through it. I feel like in both cases, it's kind of, they made a lot of sense and weren't asking a whole lot. In both cases, the Hedstrom variance obviously was the easier of the two to see that, there's a 1 foot variance request, which feels like fine, because we have a lot of, as I said in the meeting, we have many funny shaped lots and things over the years that have just been a little bit tighter than maybe they would have been at another time, but it seemed fair.
All right. Anyone else have any questions on that or concerns at all?
Craig, did you have any thoughts? You had that look. No? Okay. And then the EDA, I thought,
Well, we'll do
we'll
do one and
do
then
them separately.
Yeah, we got.
Yeah, right. Just rolling right through.
You
sorry.
are. You're ready to go.
No, I am.
I would put a motion to approve Resolution 2023-19, Hedstrom variance.
Anyone like to second that?
I would second that.
Any further discussion, questions, comments? Anything you'd like to ask the owners? All right, all in favor of,
Aye.
whoa.
Moving
All
right
right.
along.
Resolution 2023-19, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right. That was unanimous. We're on to ordinance 2023-05. Mike?
Yeah. Again, this one, I'd asked early on about, whether this would have been R1 to begin with, even before it became part of the EDA there, or EDA. And, because it makes sense that it would be. And as you look at how the Gunfoot Trail comes through and all that kind of thing, it seemed a really, obvious switch that would be more useful to who we are now than who we were then. So, and yeah, I feel like you can read through all the points we made, but to me, it again just made sense. And in our discussion, I had forgotten this, but there had been other people looking at those properties in the past to see if they might be able to put something up there, but they, for whatever financial reasons of their own, decided not to. But that kind of spoke to what that land looks like it could be best used for.
So at this point, we are simply rezoning this. This is yet to have someone come with the building idea, or is that will be
Right.
shortly
I mean,
behind?
we were given some ideas about what may go there, but that is not that's not what we're talking about right now. We're
Right.
simply deciding deciding whether it could be an R1.
Sure.
And it seems appropriate to be rezoned R1.
I'll just make the comment I made several years ago when they talked about assisted living going in there. Between the proposed ideas over the past few years of what else we could use a business park for, and now this, and you come around that corner at 40 miles an hour, and then I hear comments and concerns about families and kids in front of GES and parents. I sometimes wonder, we do this and we never think through what the possibilities are. So we put this road in to kind of be a bypass and a major roadway, and all of a sudden we're half turning it into a residential area, increasing traffic on it. And then I hear the concerns that there are around the school. It's just, I don't know, it's just a comment. Certainly support this, but it just
No,
seems, for all the planning you think you're doing, sometimes I'm not sure you
Yeah.
get what you think you're getting when you're.
Right, and I think we are moving and changing as we go through this, and but you're right. I mean, that does seem the direction that this is going, but it is the direction that our community is asking.
Oh, yeah,
for.
completely, and might
It's
be a
also
better
just,
use.
it's low-hanging fruit, right? Just, it's where it is, and it's easy to hook up to, and it's
Yeah,
ready to go, right? I think there's lots of residential in that area, maybe not right there, but certainly
But
close
next,
by.
yeah, not far.
Right, and have been for a long time.
Like right around.
But your
is
point is
very
well
much-
taken, right, that,
Yeah, it's just that particular road and what it does, and it's right on that corner, and then all of a
It's
sudden, you know, it's just like, and there you are, you think you're planning and dividing and trying to,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Just an observation.
I also think that if it were to be developed as a business, like it is currently, it would be about the same amount of traffic, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, so.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because you don't know what would go in there.
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
and that was the other thing, just how can this be best used?
Sure. All right, would anyone like to make a motion for this ordinance?
I would make a motion to, I don't have the number, that
2023-05.
2023-05. I would make that motion.
All right, second?
I'll second.
All right, any further questions, comments?
Just a reminder, the county is planning on constructing a trail on the north and east side of the Gunflint to connect through there. So there are plans to improve pedestrian access to the property, which is handy if we're going to put a lot of houses right there.
Was it the north side? Or
You mean
I thought it was the
a
south
south
shoulder
side.
or a sidewalk or what?
Just, it's a trail. I think.
Trail,
Along the Gunflint on both sides?
No, just the.
south
just the
side.
north.
Wait, did you say north side?
Maybe I meant the south.
I think,
South
I think it's
side.
south side.
Because that
This
was
is-
part of the commentary
Yeah.
about the apartment buildings, is that path would actually be on the other side
Yeah,
of
people
the
would be
road.
crossing the street. to-
And it will link when it goes up from the recycling center, you know, it'll go up and then
Mhm.
take a right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that will work well,
Mhm.
on this side, but,
Yeah.
And then Anton did also mention the issues surrounding truck traffic on the road at the meeting, of course, that he's personally had to deal with and
Yeah.
Right.
well,
And
That's
then-
called in about, but was still supportive of the
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
recommendation.
Well, that's the issue that Tracy brought up.
Yeah.
Mhm. Those the
Just so
designated,
yeah, I don't know.
it's kind of why that road's there, so people can do that, you know, truckers and
Yep.
whatever, and now all of a sudden
Absolutely.
it's becoming a great neighborhood.
Working.
Oh, well, there we go. All right, anything else? All right, all in favor of ordinance 2023-05, 05? Aye.
Aye.
Right, that was unanimous, very good. There we are. Thanks, Planning Commission. And next up, we have with us this evening and a special guest from the state's, Minnesota State's Historic Projects. And I'll let him introduce himself, but first I'll just a little primer, and I've mentioned this before in some of the council reports. His department had been working with the Cook County Historical Society for some time on this topic, and then they brought it over to us and wondered if the city had interest. So he came and gave us a presentation, we thought it through, and had a regroup meeting afterwards and decided, yes, I think this is a really good thing for our community. So now he's here to let all of you know all about it so we can think about it and decide if this is a good thing we'd like to pursue. So David's here, he came up from St. Paul this evening and to show us this. So I think this has a lot of application for some of our other work, our harbor work on our erosion issues on the East Harbor and work on the west. It has application to the Coast Guard Station building and just a lot of other work we're thinking of in the community and maybe our master park plan as we go forward. So that's why we think this would be a really good opportunity, but there we go. So, David, thank you for coming back, and if you'd like to introduce yourself to
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you so much, Mayor Benson. My name's David Mather. I'm the National Register Archaeologist at the State Historic Preservation Office, and I'll share my screen to show some images. Sorry, I had to rejoin because my computer went to sleep.
Got tired of waiting?
So, I think that is okay. And, yes, as the mayor said, you know, we've had some discussions previously. There's two projects that we've been talking about, and I've got a brief summary of both of those, and I first just wanted to introduce our office and what we do. Most importantly, my supervisor, Amy Spong, was going to be here with me tonight, but unfortunately she was ill this morning, and so she stayed home and sends her regrets. The State Historic Preservation Office is part of the Minnesota Department of Administration. Every state and U.S. territory has a State Historic Preservation Office, and so there's 59 of them. That system was created in 1966 with the National Historic Preservation Act, and also the Tribal Historic Preservation Offices are a peer program within the federal historic preservation system. Under Minnesota state law, the Commissioner of Administration is the State Historic Preservation Officer, and we have a brand new commissioner as of like 2 days ago, and so I have not met her yet, and I don't know if she knows that she is the State Historic Preservation Officer yet, but she will soon. I bet she does. And circled on there, Amy Spong is the Deputy SHPO and our Division Director, and so she's the one that actually directs our work, and I'm one of a number of staff that report directly to her. On the lower right picture, she's seated at the left with the white sweater on. That's Amy. And so we do a number of things. One of those is we make the statewide historic preservation plan and update that periodically. And it was exciting this year to have Grand Marais Harbor on the cover. And so the plan is kind of a real high-level thing to just provide, some goals and public input and about historic preservation in Minnesota. In our office, we have historians. I'm an archaeologist, one of two. We have historical architects, planners, and others, and we do have a number of program areas. The ones that connect with what I'm talking about tonight are manage the National Register of Historic Places for the state, and we're part of the oversight board of the statewide survey program. We work closely with the Tribal Historic Preservation Offices. As I mentioned, they're a peer program to ours, or programs rather. We also work closely with the Office of the State Archaeologist, Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, Heritage Preservation Commissions, and county and local museums, other historic preservation professionals. And then the statewide survey, I'll talk about that one first. These two things kind of interconnect, but this seems like the good first step. This is the statewide survey of historical and archaeological sites is a very small piece of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from the Legacy Amendment, and the way it works is that there's an oversight board consisting of representatives from SHPO, that's us. It's administered by the Minnesota Historical Society, and then also the other oversight board members are the state archaeologist and the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. And so what the board does is create historic preservation projects, usually like there's survey projects to try to find previously unknown sites or explore parts of the state that we don't know much about, or area or themes and types of historic properties that we don't know much about. And I'll show you some examples of recent projects there. The two most recent ones that are completed one is a county-wide survey of Freeborn County around Albert Lee, and the other is a planning study that's going to lead to survey and inventory around the state capitol in St. Paul. And most of the projects that have happened over the life of the program have been county-wide surveys. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but clearly the majority to do this project in Grand Marais at a city-wide level would be a first for the program, and I think it would be very useful because the urban areas generally get kind of skipped over with the countywide surveys because you can't really do the whole county. And so they're defined geographically. On the left, there's Freeborn County. On the right, there's the capital planning area in St. Paul, which is the crosshatch area. And so what these projects typically involve, and they don't have to all be the same, but there's kind of a template that we follow for a lot of them. There's background research, what's already known, looking at historical records, maps, also looking at, paleo-environmental data like pollen cores, what was the vegetation like, 8,000 years ago, things like that. And so depending on where we're looking in the state, there's either a fair amount of information or not much. And then often for the archaeological projects, there's a modeling phase where they look at information from previous investigations, they look at landscape data like slope, distance to water, things like that, and figure out where in the study area is there high potential, where is there low potential in between for the presence of preserved archaeological sites. Also, we do this for the capital project. Did this for historical archaeology with historical maps. Like these are Sanborn fire insurance maps on the right, and they show what was, what kind of houses and businesses were there at different times in the past, and then other plat maps and other data are useful for that. And I know this is too small to read on the screen, but on the upper left that's the Freeborn County one, and the different colors show the different probability. The one that's a little bit easier to see on the screen is the capital area, and in that one the green is low potential, the yellow is medium potential, and the brown is high potential. And this is just, they figured, the archaeologists that did the investigation figured this out based on analyzing the old maps and looking at sites that were already known and so on. And so it's not true because it's a model, and so in the low potential areas there are probably some archaeological sites. If you dig in the high potential areas, you might find nothing, but it's just a matter of probability, a useful planning layer. And then, so looking at Grand Marais, what we've thought of how to implement that here, if there's interest in doing that, is that we would have the probability model made based on background research, but also include a geological assessment, because here I think a really important part is an understanding of the age of the landscape. Like when did, how many thousands of years ago did the harbor and the shoreline end up, as they are now? How many, farther up the slope within the city limits are there glacial, lake shores that would be have good potential for archaeology? We know there are elsewhere around the lake, but where, if are they here and where? Then once that model is made, the archaeological survey would be done in little sample parcels to test the model essentially, and hopefully find archaeological sites. When this is done at the county level or in other projects, the way it's usually done is to focus on public land, but then do a lot of public outreach so that private owners, if they wish, can be part of it, and if they do not wish, that is completely fine. And then depending on the results of the survey, I'd really like to see at least one of the sites have further testing to figure out if it is individually significant, if it's eligible for the National Register on its own. A public outreach is a big part of this program, and so we would want to, have the archaeologists who are working on the project figure out different ways to do that. Sometimes it's tours, sometimes it's kind of an open house thing, sometimes it's posters or other things, website. And then the results and reports, of course, provided to the city. One aspect of that with archaeological sites is that, under state law, the site locational information is protected data to prevent vandalism and things like that. However, managers, local governments, they, of course, you need to know where these things are in order to take care of them. So those are all pieces of it. As an example of implementing this, on the upper left is Freeborn County, and so there's the probability model in the county. The red little pieces are where they actually did survey. And so even though compared to things archaeologists usually do, these are big projects, it's very much based on sampling. And so for long-term planning, the probability model is really helpful, and and once it's tested with the survey, we have, a better sense of how accurate it is. It doesn't, it may mean that, at least like if projects or other things are being planned in various areas in the future, you'll have this layer of information to consider along with all the other things you need to consider. And so, with Grand Marais, I think it would be really helpful to have for the probability model to look at the municipal boundaries themselves as the study area, and that's all, desktop stuff. That's not and looking around. It's not a matter of entering property for that. In terms of testing the model, then that would be archaeological field work with some excavation and other things. And which would, of course, require permission. So that is briefly that piece of it. The connected piece potentially is the National Register of Historic Places, and that's what led to our initial conversations with the County Historical Society and the mayor and others. And what we've been thinking of for that is looking at Grand Marais Harbor, actually both harbors, as a cultural landscape district. The National Register of Historic Places is a program administered by the National Park Service, and it's administered through the state historic preservation offices, such as ours. And their short definition of it is the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation. By that standard, I think certainly Grand Marais Harbor is a very significant place. And very briefly, the places that can be considered in the program, they're either classified as a building, a structure, site, object, or district. The harbor would be and surrounding area would be a district. Significance is at local, state, or national level. The listing is equal either way. And to be eligible, the property has to have a historic context. It has to be significant, but it also has to have integrity, meaning how well it's preserved, and meet one of the 4 criteria. We know what buildings are. Structures are built things that are not buildings, like bridges. Sites can be archaeological sites. They can be also just landscape sites. Objects are more rare in the register, but they're things like sculptures or fountains or things like that. And a district, which is what we would be looking at here, is just a group of those things. It doesn't have to be all the same thing. It can be a group of all of those things combined. That's a district with downtown district with buildings. Here's a district in Red Wing focused on Hay-Manicha, Barn Bluff, which is more of a landscape-based district, but there's archaeological sites there as well. The 4 criteria, real quick, criterion A is kind of the broad patterns of history. That would be something like, the fur trade or logging or commercial fishing or things like that. B is association with significant people. C is basically architecture and engineering, or engineering. And D is information, which is often archaeological information, but does not have to be archaeological. And the process for this is that once there's been a survey and evaluation, a draft nomination is written reviewed by National Register staff, and usually that goes back and forth a few times between the author and the reviewers. In this case, part of the reason we reached out early is that we were, thinking about doing this ourselves rather than having, most of the nominations we see come from external sources. And so we're strictly in the reviewer role. In this case, we're thinking, we're kind of interested in working on this already. It'd be easy enough to do it that way. Once the nomination is ready, we present it to the State Review Board, or State Historic Preservation Review Board. That is a volunteer panel. They meet 4 times a year. There's historic preservation professionals and interested members of the public on it. Provided they vote to approve it, then there's a final review by the Deputy SHPO. Then it gets sent to the Keeper of the National Register in Washington, D.C. They review it, and then if that is approved, then it is listed. And so there's a lot of steps there. Our goal as staff is to not present something to the board unless we think it's going to go through, but we don't have any control really after that. So we just, try to respond as best we can. And so back to reality here, what we're just very provisionally thinking about as a landscape district is roughly in the red. And the reason that we're talking about the statewide survey program first is that if that survey is done, it would provide a lot more information to contribute to this. We know there's some significant archaeological sites that are known already, but there's a lot that we don't know. And so the boundary, may be different based on the results of that study. It may not. There's a couple, it's hard to see, little question marks in there. One is, the bigger question mark is the park, and I don't know. I think that the bear tree really contributes, but whether the whole park does, I don't know. The other question mark, which is harder to see, is the Jim Scott Fish House, which is listed in the National Register in 1981, I think. And anyway, with this boundary as it is now, it's right there. And so it doesn't matter in terms of the National Register whether to include it or not. It might be simpler not to, since it's already listed, because otherwise it would have to be kind of like a little bump out. But it certainly fits the historic context of all the rest of it. One thing about this district is that part of it is federal land, and so there's a slightly different process for, it's called a concurrent nomination, where the Superior National Forest would review it through their system, and the state would review it through ours, and then it would be submitted by the Forest Service to the keeper after all that. We've had a number of discussions with the heritage staff at Superior National Forest, and they're, very interested in the harbor, and they're, very interested in the National Register also, so that they're on board with talking about all this. We're looking at, I think I mentioned, we're looking at it as a cultural landscape, which is a relatively new idea for the National Register. Early in the program, most places that were listed were buildings. The majority still are buildings. There's quite a few archaeological sites, and it seems like the obvious places were listed real early in the program in the 60s and 70s, but every once in a while, we come across one that's like, I can't believe that's not listed already. For me, Grand Marais Harbor is a place like that, and I think the reason is that, early in the program, they were not considering landscapes. That wasn't something that the program dealt with very well, and that's changed a lot. Anyway, this is a little bit of, just interesting historical information about the harbor, the areas and periods of significance that we're thinking of, looking at indigenous history, including Grand Portage Band history, fur trade, commercial fishing, tourism, art, as a kind of broad themes to address in terms of the historical significance. It's very multi-layered. And then the district will have contributing elements. So there's landscape sites like Artist Point, objects, the Bear Tree, and then structures and buildings, so the light and the breakwaters, things like that. You know, the harbor, the bodies of water themselves would be landscape sites as well. There's underwater archaeology. There's remains of at least 2 shipwrecks, and there's other, you know, material artifacts and things in the water. The Great Lakes Shipwreck Preservation Society has done some really great work to identify those. And then also terrestrial archaeology. We know of some sites on the Forest Service land. The statewide survey project would, you know, hopefully tell us more about the non-federal land. Some of those include the you know, rock art and historical graffiti. That's hard to see, but that's the pecked outline of a masted ship, which is really, really interesting. And then other things, there's all these, you know, you've probably all seen them, but there's all these, you know, amazing, you know, carved signatures in cursive. I can't imagine doing that, but yeah, that's Jim Scott, as in the Jim Scott Fish House. Anyway, I would guess that we would be looking at this under criterion A, broad patterns of history, D, and probably C for the engineering of the harbor. And then there's, you know, a number of things to do before we would really be able to make much progress with them. Top of the list there is to consult with the Grand Portage Tribal Historic Preservation Office. We've been trading emails for months, and we will connect. I sent them the same information, it's the same summary as for the meeting today, and we'll be able to connect in the near future. Also, Bill Clayton at the National Monument is an archaeologist. You may probably know him, maybe. But anyway, he works closely with the TIPO. So anyway, that's and the last point, the form can be classed as protected information. Usually that's what we do for archaeological sites. In this case, there's going to be a mix of things, and so what we would try to do then is to have probably a redacted version that's available to the public, but also then the full version that would include the archaeological site locations that would have to be restricted. But we would want the information itself to be available to the interested members of the public regardless. And that's that. I'm happy to talk and answer questions.
I'll anticipate one question right away to get it started, as I'm sure everyone else would like to know what would be the city's obligation or responsibilities to this, and yeah, what it would require from us, or if it requires something from our larger community too, at all.
In terms of the National Register or
just the whole process itself.
Yeah, it's you know, in terms of the process of making it happen, I think, you know, it's very welcome to have, you know, people who are interested participating in it. In terms of the statewide survey process or project, it would be really helpful if we can coordinate with the city to do the outreach to landowners, especially, since that would just make it a lot easier. However, whatever the process for that would be. And to, you know, logistics for, you know, public outreach events, you know, where and when would be best and how to do that, or what seems most appropriate. In terms of the National Register, that's, you know, the work of that would be more in our office, and we would be sharing, you know, that information as we go with the city. The listing, there's the National Register connects with state law and federal law, and the you know, as meaning that, you know, those places are, you know, ideally preserved. They can't always be, and so there's, under both state law and process, or in federal law, there's processes for consultation. For the federal law, that applies to the federal agencies, like, so it might be the Army Corps of Engineers, or it might be, well, it'd probably be the Army Corps, or I guess the Forest Service, because since they're a landowner. And so if they were going to do a project, like they wanted to, I'm sure they don't want to, but if they wanted to build something on, Artist Point or something like that, they're required to consult and figure out whether doing whatever that thing is would be an adverse effect on the historic property. And so the first step, as it is now, they'd have to figure out if it is a historic property. And so if it's already listed, obviously it is. So the federal law applies to places that are eligible as well as listed. Under state law, places that are listed in the National Register, there's an obligation of the state, which includes, municipal governments, to, basically protect I think the term is protect the physical features and historic character. And so that doesn't mean that things can't change their thing, because they do all the time and, lots of places. And so, but it's a matter of consultation, like does, building, I don't know what, a new kiosk somewhere affect the historical. Marais Harbor seems so easy in that regard to me because it's so well taken care of anyway. I mean, there's not anything going on there that's harming it historically. It's so well preserved, and because it's cared for so much. And so, but it does. There is that connection to state law, which would apply to the city. The archaeology part is a responsibility under state law as it is now, regardless of the National Register.
I think that was a distinction you made last time, that some of this wouldn't matter whether we did this or not. Some of that review would take place on a change regardless.
Yeah, usually.
Doesn't add anything.
Right. Yeah, usually it's a matter of it's starting at a different place. And so, like, would we start from, where we are now, where we kind of have this sense, yeah, this is important, but why and how and where and all that, we don't know for sure, versus, a nomination that would be done would, ideally define all those things. And so in terms of reviewing a project or planning, future things, we'd have pretty strong parameters about, what seems appropriate, what doesn't. It just helps make decisions in that regard.
So some of the groundwork you would have to do either way is done then?
I'm sorry, what?
So some of the groundwork you would have to do either way would be done?
Yes, absolutely. And you'd be starting from the known point.
Mm-hmm.
With the program, it's one of the biggest challenges we have is like for all the early in the program in the 60s and 70s, when they were nominating all the obvious places, the standards were so different. So it was like the form was like 2 pages long, and there'd be like a paragraph here and a paragraph there. And so it's listed, whatever, Fort Snelling, places like that, they're listed. But we have so little information for managers now that now the standards of what the program are changed a lot decades ago. And so the current nominations have a lot of information about what's contributing, what's not contributing, why, what period, and so they're a lot more helpful.
Well, so the Cook County Historical Society has been with us a lot longer than we have, so Maria and Katie are here, and I don't know, you could probably have some comments and thoughts too.
Do you want to say anything too?
You can have the chair.
You can come up. So,
Oh, just all three of you, whatever.
yeah, I'm Maria Erickson. I'm the president of the Cook County Historical Society. And Dave, correct me if I have any of this information wrong. So we're looking at 2 separate activities, the creating the harbor as a historical district, and then doing a survey of the city. this is at no cost
Correct.
to the residents, to the city, to the Historical Society. If the harbor is designated a historical district, it doesn't mean that things can't change, which you'd said earlier.
Correct.
It just is letting people know, hey, there's something significant that happened here. And for your other projects, you know, just reiterating that would be something that would be done anyway. I think it was done when that new break wall went in. It was done in that area over in the harbor. But what this does in both of these situations is provide us with more information about the story of Cook County and specifically the city of Grand Marais and the harbor. And we've had several meetings with David, and there isn't anything that we really see as a drawback. You know, the public can or doesn't have to participate and let their backyard be dug up or not, or, so I think it seems pretty non-invasive if people don't want it to be. We just haven't seen any drawbacks, and it would provide a great bundle of information for sharing, for us to be able to share the story. So I just wanted to give the reasons why we thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
People have questions for David at all?
I think
Thoughts?
I think it'd be great.
I
It'd be fun.
agree. I love the idea.
Yeah, you can dig in my yard.
Right on. We'll head
My
over
dogs
there.
do, so, you know.
Mine's already dug.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah. And this isn't really with the thought in mind there'll be some huge archaeological project
Right.
all over town either. I mean, so
Well, you
people have
never
to budget.
know, everybody might want in.
Well, it's true. Yeah, if they want to, it might
Yeah,
get
that would
big.
be a lovely challenge, I guess. If there's so much interest, public interest, that to accommodate everybody, that would be great. And the survey work in archaeology is a pretty light touch. So it's like small excavations, and then of course once they're, you know, the information's recorded, they're immediately backfilled, and so you know, it's in some areas of like where there'd be survey excavation, it would be the shovel tests are like, it's kind of like what you would dig to plant a tree, you know, things like, you know, or do a fence post about that size, but they'd be, you know, kind of systematically dug to see if, and so if there are artifacts there, then they could figure out like, well, what's the boundary of this site? And then hopefully if they find some promising sites, then you know, one or more of them, we could do something more intensive to figure out if they are significant. That's you know, archaeologists call it formal excavation, so those are square excavation units, but it's still pretty small because we don't want to, you know, we want to learn enough about it to know what it is and figure out if it's significant, but we don't want to, if we dig it all up, then we've destroyed it, and we don't want to do that, so.
I wondered too, would this give an opportunity for like all the residents who have found things in their yard to tell you?
Yes, absolutely.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, and that's I didn't mention that when I was talking about the other projects, but that's one thing they often do, like they'll document, like if somebody has an artifact collection, the archaeologist doing the project will document it. And that's really helpful. There's a few sites, you know, that have been recorded in Grand Marais already, and I think most of them are from, you know, things that people have found and that are at the County Historical Society now. But we don't know, and some of those are really interesting artifacts. There's that copper, you know, adze or spud or something like that. There's a projectile point that's like 4,000 or 5,000 years old. But for those sites, we don't know anything more than the individual artifact. So maybe that's all there is. Maybe it was out of context, but maybe there's something more there. We don't know.
A garbage pit that still has to be excavated?
Maybe.
Oh. Anyone else have some thoughts or questions at all?
two things I really appreciate about the process are starting with the survey to just prepare ourselves with better information, which I think just is useful to us in whatever
Mhm.
we're going to do. And I'm just a nerd about that stuff too. I'm really curious. But then the district, when they talk about the different eras, the idea of what history is expanded quite a bit. And I think from what we typically think about, and you can see around the room that this community clearly honors a period of its history, and there's so much more to it than that. And the way that they're talking about the district goes much further back in time, but it also comes closer to the current period of time too, to really talk about the things that are still happening here and the historical context around those, and I think that's cool too.
Can you just do a high level? We talked when you were here last about timelines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks. For this, we would want to do the statewide survey project first, and the good news that I'm hearing is that there's some unspent funds, and so we could do that in 2024. So we have to, the steps to get that done would be, I would finish writing up a RFP, share it with the city and the oversight board members to make sure that sounds good to everybody. And then the Historical Society would, the Minnesota Historical Society would advertise it for bids. The oversight board would select a contractor from the bids, and then it's just logistics and getting out on the ground. And so, and then once it's all done, the oversight board also, reviews the reports and whatever other deliverables, and make sure it's, what we all talked about and all that. And then, the members of the board, to various degrees, are involved also at different points in the project, like to, hopefully helping with the public events or, whatever else it may be. So I'm guessing that would probably, speaking for the board, that would probably be me, but hopefully some of the others would, it wouldn't surprise me if they would want to get up here too.
So what does the finished product really look like on a survey?
So there's a report, and then there's inventory data. So for archaeological sites in Minnesota, the state archaeologist manages that information, so those locations, and then just information about what the site is recorded there, and then the report is available, to researchers and the city, of course. And that details, the important pieces of that are like what the survey entailed, like where did they actually look, where did they not look. The model would be presented in there, both with maps, but also text to, like how did we come up with this? And, because there's a lot of things that are subjective about doing something like that. And so, anyway, all that information's there, information about the site, what excavation was actually done, what was found, things like that. And then the last stage of it is that, curation of all the data. And so, typically, like from public land anyway, the curation happens at the state level, but I think we should talk about that because it would be, if the Historical Society is interested, it would make a lot of sense to keep that information here rather than in St. Paul. I mean, I guess the information is available to researchers either way, but it seems, better if possible to, keep the actual objects here, whether they're in exhibits or otherwise.
Well, and you mentioned last time some of this was just tracking property history too, a little
Mhm.
bit. Like, it's not just always digging in the ground, it's also just looking at records of.
Yes, yeah, and so Yeah, I'm gonna go back. So I had a picture of an example of those maps somewhere. There, on the right, those are those fire insurance maps. I think they're hard to read on the screen, but those and plat maps and other things, just land use history. Like if something, I'm just making things up. If there was a hotel or something at some point, like maybe in the 1880s, we know that if that's preserved, then that could be very archaeologically significant. We don't know if it's preserved unless we look for it. But other land use records subsequent to that, talking about like when it was torn down or how it if it burned down or whatever happened, what happened on that property after that, give us further indication of how likely it is that there could be something preserved. And that's how that map for the capital area on the lower right was made. That was all studying maps and land records, because there's some potential for pre-contact native archaeology there, but there was so much earth moving made when the neighborhoods were created and then the state capitol was built and all that stuff, and so we can it's the historical archaeology of like the old neighborhoods, like they're kind of immigrant neighborhoods, and part of Rondo neighborhood and other things were there where the capitol was later built, and we know already that there's some preserved archaeology related to those. And so the thing that always amazes me for urban archaeology is like places where you just would not imagine something could still be preserved, but just by the way things happened, it might be under layers and layers of construction fill, but it's still there. And other times, of course, it's not. But those maps and other land records are kind of the first step of getting to it.
Okay.
And so in Grand Marais, I would imagine that there's potential for both historical archaeology related to the town itself and its early history, as well as pre-contact and contact period native archaeology, and everything in between.
Okay. So 2024 for the statewide survey, and then the other piece follows?
Yeah, I think that because then we would be able to incorporate results from the survey, whatever they may be, and so depending on the timing of getting the statewide survey report in, probably the earliest that the National Register nomination could be finalized would be 2025. Might be 2026 more likely, but I don't yet. A lot of variables. There's pieces of it that are not dependent on the statewide survey, like the kind of the historic context pieces, and I have a really messy draft of some of that already, more of an outline, but the other variable in all that is how much time I get to spend working on it versus doing other things, and but it is but I'm delighted because Amy and other the leadership at admin and SHPO are really excited about this, and so they're not going to be telling me not to work on it. I know that. So that's good.
So what would be the next step asks of the city then?
I think that the next thing would be, once I get a draft request for proposals for the statewide survey project, I'd like to share that with the city, just to, so that I hit the main points of it here, but just give you a chance to look at that and provide some feedback if you want, and other than that, it would be I think once we actually get a contract issued, then we would be, you know, needing to talk about schedule and how to do the public outreach and things like that.
What does it require for the city to then proceed or say yes or no to this? Is that a resolution? Is that just a?
I don't know that we have to say yes or no to this.
Okay.
I think if we get a chance to look at the RFP and we've got feedback and comments, that's probably the next step for us.
Okay. Does this sound good with you guys?
Mhm.
Just want to
Yeah,
make sure.
sure.
All right.
great.
All right. Very good. Thanks to all of you for getting this together. Katie and Marais, I know you guys have been working on this too for a long time.
absolutely.
And thanks for coming up twice
Oh, you.
to
No, you have to come up
to do this. So,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
I look forward to hearing. So, are you going to come back in person? Is that it?
Well, yeah. It's-
January?
Sure, I've been here in January before. I like it.
All right. We'll wait to hear from you. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking
Doing
the
this.
time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Ooh, and with that, we're on to council and staff reports. Which direction?
I can go.
Okay.
Okay, well, you got most of what we did at planning and zoning, but we also did talk about the garbage dumpsters in the downtown. And one of the things that we kind of threw it to this tonight, and he went through it, it's like, well, you know, we kind of have most of this stuff covered in the language that we have already. There were some specific tweaks, which I'd have to look at, but, so for instance, when people are looking to build or whatever, get a permit for the downtown for using, you know, or for having a food vendor or whatever, you know, making sure that they've got a receptacle for their garbage, and then.
Is
also
that in the
making-
application though yet?
We don't have it in the application, but that's where it'll go.
Yeah. And I don't know, Mike, do you want to speak to this, or do you remember?
I do remember.
No, I thought you might, so I'm throwing it to you, man.
Yeah,
'Cause I thought it was great.
The for sure next steps that we're going to do are enhance our existing land use permit application to ask for some more information. We've got rules about trash handling that exist for all the city already, and we just don't have a process for asking people about it, how they're going to comply with them before they build. So we're just going to ask that in our application process. Where's the trash going to be? How's it going to be handled? And we'll add some other pieces too, like where's your propane tank going to go? Things like that. Other issues that we've talked about, but we're just going to modify the questions that we're asking on our application to pick some of that up. And then we're going to create a first level information sheet about what those rules are to help communicate with the people that already have buildings that aren't going to be applying for a land use permit, to just say, hey, everybody, this is what city regulations say about trash, what your responsibilities are, what the rules are. And then we're also going to create a second level communication that will be providing to folks that are having some difficulty following those rules, just to notify them this is what's deficient and what needs to get fixed. The part that we put in the conversation but didn't say for sure whether we're going to go to that step is when we redid the city code, it created the ability to do administrative fines. We have an administrative fine process in the city code, but we don't have any violations yet in our city code that we say we're going to use the administrative fines to handle. And this is one that I think is kind of set up perfectly for that process. So we need to do a little more work with the city code if we want to go that far. And we might find that we have to do that. And I think that also kind of fits in a little bit with the conversation we had with the sheriff last meeting, that building up the administrative fine process might help us find alternate ways to deal with some of the things we've asked law enforcement to deal with, but that we don't necessarily need a sworn peace officer to handle.
So would this be something that you would generate, and then we would say like, yeah, that sounds like what we're saying? in terms of like a penalty and a fee and all that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, we need to do a little more homework on that before
Okay,
it's ready to
yeah.
talk about it. But just as a concept, we wanted to make sure it was on the table.
So that was that. One more thing. Oh, and then next time, what we're gonna do, oh, the parking. Parking in the downtown is on our next agenda for planning and zoning to talk about. And then I also have library. They hired a new full-time librarian, so that's very exciting. They've been short for quite some time, so that's great. I know that Amanda went with Erica, I think, to the Minnesota Library Association conference. They were going to go, I think, when I last talked to her, so I haven't heard back from them on that. And really, that was kind of the big things for the library, which was great.
Anything else? That's it?
Is the wide meeting on a regular?
They are, I mean, when did they?
So you're back to a regular meeting?
It is a regular meeting, but it was, yeah, it was
Okay.
kind of,
Just wondering if they're, I knew Emily was trying to get it going and whatever, so I
Yeah.
just wondered if. All right.
yeah, no, it is happening regularly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we did planning, zoning. I haven't had anything with the North House, although we do have another work session planned for October 31st. Costumes optional.
I think, no, costume's mandatory.
Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was hoping,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to wear my Jared Allen mullet that I got at the Vikings game last year. It's going to be spectacular.
That's gonna be good. So that'll be, so more to come on that. Other than that, that's it.
Okay.
With animal rescue, and we took a look at the GES buildings behind there. They seemed really excited about those buildings, and hopefully I'll have more about that sooner or later.
Did your group go too? Was this a separate, or you guys all went at the
We all
same
went
time?
together.
We all went together.
Okay, all together.
Yeah.
All right. So you had a contract or a builder type person to help.
We met with Jerry Starr,
Okay.
Okay.
who is, does all the maintenance at the school and was really involved in placing those buildings in the first place.
Okay.
So thanks, Jerry, for giving us the tour.
All right.
That's it.
That. Alrighty.
Well, let's start with the park board. We had a meeting last week. And just give you a rough review. We did vote for some rate changes. We went with a 5% across the board on nightly, seasonal camping and marina rates. We kept the nightly camping rates the same for 2024. No, I'm trying to think that through. Did we do a 3 or a 5? I thought we did.
I thought 5.
Yeah, because I have 3 written over here, but then I'm thinking that's what I was, yeah, okay, anyway, yeah. 5, 5, 5. So, I mean, so to give you a little information about how things are going this year, September of 2023, the revenue was down about 5% versus 2022, about $13,000, but currently we're about 5% over 2022, if you take the whole summer, compound it. So, I mean, we, a little slower September, but I didn't seem like it to me, with all the traffic on the roads.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think the golf course officially is closed now. Wasn't that October 8th? I think they're starting to.
Like Monday it
Yeah,
closed or
they're
something?
just last weekend. So,
Sunday.
I guess that's about it with the park. We just had a discussion on rates. We did have that open meeting to the public concerning the master plan. I think we talked about we already talked about that quite a bit already, but there were some new suggestions and kind of a commingled combination of, I think the consensus is leaning towards the number one choice, but there are some things with two that they want to combine in. So there's going to be another draft of variations of 1 and 2 before we'll have our next meeting to look at that. And anybody who wants to, I'm sure it's still on the website, both 1 and 2 on the city website, so they can look at that, just see what's going on with the rec park master plan. Let's see, I think the other meeting we did have a Public Utilities Commission meeting on October 4th, where we discussed just two things on the agenda: facility fees and the water plant filter media system, which filters our water. So we're going to get that tested to see what condition that it is in, to see whether or not we need to clean or replace it. That's for the water plant. And then we did have a vote to eliminate the facility fees that the city's been charging for hooking up to water and sewer. And yeah, the $1,000 charge will not be applicable anymore.
What prompted
Yeah,
that?
really.
What prompted it is basically what we generate with that fee is not, I don't know how to explain it. It's not really producing, I mean, with, I
not
guess
worth it?
we have, what did we have last year? Five?
We collect
We collect $10,000 a year?
Yeah, it's not a high enough fee
Right.
to accomplish what we say it's intended to accomplish, and
okay.
maybe by a factor of 10. And it is a potential barrier to new construction of housing. Not a huge one, but it's one we have control over. And so that's what the conversation was really about. Do we keep it stuck in this middle ground where it's not really that useful to us as an organization, but it's a useful gesture? It's a meaningful gesture to say,
Yeah.
you need to buy into this system that other people have built for you. But it doesn't really account for the cost of new growth that we capture in rates anyway.
Right, so the feeling is,
So
it's
we're
nice to
getting it.
have the hookup, nice to have the customer online with the city, because that's a future hookup that multiplies over the years.
Right.
How about that apartment building? Would that have been a single hookup, or is that $100,000?
Well, the way it was written, that would have been, what is it, every
Yeah.
every
100 grand.
20,000, yeah, right.
I suppose.
Well, yeah.
It won't
So then
take
there was
that many months
discussion.
to collect that from them.
No.
No. So then there was discussion too, how to do this. Well, then you can start talking about different kind of methods of a tier system. Like if somebody's hooking up a sixplex, they get this different rate than the guy who hooks
sure.
up. I mean, you can do all kinds of these things, but then are you really, I think the thrust of it is
barrier.
it's a barrier, or is it, it's not a barrier to everybody. Let's face it. I mean, if somebody's building a $1 million house, a $1,000 hookup is not going to cross their mind, but it is a barrier to some people. And, now that we have gone through the planning commission to do the things that we've done to promote more lots to be developed, there was quite a bit of discussion about it, but I think we just ultimately realized that to collect enough money off of it to actually be a substantial money-making things that could be used to, like, rebuild the treatment plant or the water facility, you'd have to charge 10 times what we charge with the amount
So
of
instead of
applications
1,000, it
that
would
we
have to be
get.
10,000, is that what you're?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
20 for
Or
water
20,
and sewer.
right.
Yeah, bare minimum, yeah.
That's what it cost us to get that.
Wow.
Well,
No,
it-
just
the
to
analysis
generate.
is simple, right? It's not a lot of deep engineering, but if you think about how many more units would we need to think about expanding our system and what might that cost?
Sure, oh, I get you, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
Well,
we got a septic system.
Well, in this case, we still collect all the actual costs from a new customer for their connection. So we're not asking existing customers to pay or write down the cost of expanding the system for new customers, which I think is fair.
yeah,
It's just this extra piece that we're not collecting anymore.
I see, okay. That seems fair.
So I guess if anybody has any more questions, that is everything I have.
Is everything? All right. Just trying to find this quickly, no, I won't. Look at that. All right, let's see. Well, all of us, and this is more for the listening audience, should they be out there. So all of us last night, of course, were at the joint meeting with the county commissioners to talk about the joint agreements we have with the YMCA, with the,
Sure.
I'm sorry, what?
Vice Sheriff.
Oh,
Please.
yes, with law enforcement,
Yeah.
and then with our streets and maintenance that way. And our next meeting will be October 19th at 2:30. And the first contract to be looked at and started working on will be the city streets. And then following that will be the law enforcement and then the YMCA in that order. So there'll be small groups of city council and county commissioners working on this along with all of the people involved. So if we need Brady Powers or we need the county engineer, highway engineer, whatever, they'll be part of this process. And so more for the general public on that. One of the things I've always wanted to do, which I thought would be super fun, ever since I was on the council, the League of Minnesota sponsors Mayor for a Day for kids. And from 4th to 6th grade, they can enter an essay contest about what they would do if they were mayor. And you read about it later. It's kind of fun. So I sent an email out to the new principal and then Rachel Lehman over at GES, and they both were really enthusiastic, and so are their teachers. So I'm going to use them next week and see what we can do. And they write their essays, and they actually go through the League of Minnesota Cities to the for words.
okay.
But we could do some fun things locally for the kids, along with it, not just. So we'll have to think what that will be. But anyways, so that'd be
You have to
fun.
find that gavel.
You could let them be the mayor.
They
key.
could run.
And the key. Gotta get the key back.
We'll all stay home one Wednesday night and let them have at it.
That's
Hard to say. And then this morning, WTIP is doing some long-term planning, and they've invited all sorts of organizations around our community to come in and chat with them. So myself, Patrick, and Mike did that today, and we just got to talk about how we communicate and how we utilize them and ideas or suggestions that we had about that. We thought most things were very positive. Patrick, you'd probably deal with them the most of anyone, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were that it's always easy to work with them and set up any type of outreach we need through them. It's never been a problem.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, and just any other thoughts we had. So that was a nice opportunity to do that. I have been invited next week, which is what I'm trying to find here, but I'm not finding it. With those erosion issues and other issues around the harbor, there is the Great Lakes Coastal, I can't remember the rest of it, RCPI, I think it is. But all the mayors along the shore, along with other people who might be interested, so I forwarded this, for instance, to Elena Hansel to see if she'd want to join with us, and Shane. It's just a program, they've already worked in other coastal areas around the country, and possibly there could be long-term some help with this along the East Harbor, this program. So this is an introductory meeting just to learn what this is all about and what will happen with that. So I'll let you guys know. And I guess that's it. Then I was just going to ask Mike, is there any updates on the liquor store and city hall stuff? Anything upcoming meetings or things we have with that?
Taste tests?
Probably next meeting, we'll have LHB come back and try to close the loop on the conversation about geothermal versus other mechanical system, and also give an update on the material selection process as well. Besides that, Kim and I had an initial meeting with Ellers this morning to start the formal planning process of how we might finance the project. And we have another meeting scheduled next week to talk about some of our preliminary ideas, and we want to get that in front of you yet this year, quickly if we can. Make sure we get started on that.
Where are we at with the short stay rental thing for? Because I'm assuming our next steps, will this have to be a resolution that we need like 2 times to post or say, or whatever? What does it mean so we're ready?
It's actually likely going to be the county that needs to pass ordinance. So that's where we're at, is looking at their ordinance and imagining what needs to change in order for it to be compatible in the city limits as well. The action that you'll be asked to take is just a joint powers agreement, which we haven't written yet, but you can pass that with just one meeting, one motion.
Okay. So that means still just working with Tim? Or does that mean we need to get in front of the county commissioners, or?
It'll be all that, yeah. Right now, the ball's in our court. We're doing the work on looking at their ordinance. And yeah, once we've got an idea of what changes are necessary, we'll sit down with their staff again and talk about how to get it in front of their board.
So we're ready to go?
Mhm.
I mean, I realize I hate to say this, but it can be the end of the year. I don't like that thought. And then Dave Mills has been really busy talking about the potential of cannabis and dispensaries and maybe joint things in county and city or whatever. So I chatted with him the other day because he mentioned this at our EDA meeting, which I think I've said he's been to the county meetings and other places. And I said, you know what? Time to come here and get in front of the rest of the council and so we can have an official conversation about this. So I've asked him, and I think he's asking to get on the agenda. He said he was.
Haven't heard from him yet.
Okay. Well, I said, before this goes any farther, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting lots of questions. And it's, as a group, we need to talk about it, whatever it might be. Whatever it is. And be part, so hopefully.
Just a quick refresher, we can't have it as part of the liquor store, is that right? I mean, that's how
Right.
the rules are written right now.
They can't be in the same building if we were to do something like that. I mean, I don't, whatever it is, it's just time that, because we get asked all the time, or I do, that it's time that the council has a real official conversation about it. It's like, I don't know, we haven't even talked about it. That's all I can, because we haven't.
Not since Anton was here.
So we'll see then if Dave comes through, unless someone else on the council wants to do something, but anyways, that's all I have. That's it.
You might have noticed that there was some construction activity going on along the highway on the way to the Forest Service today, if you headed west out of town. It's the 3rd water main break we've experienced on that line, twice in a month, I think, or not very long, a couple months. The line is not quite 30 years old, so this is not supposed to be happening.
Right.
We're going to have a meeting with our engineers on Monday, and one of the things on the agenda is to start talking about how we can evaluate the line, or if it's even worth doing that, and what our options are to fix it. We'll also need to go back in time a little bit and look at the initial project, which was constructed just to add the Forest Service building to the community. And there's really no one else connected to that line. So, unfortunate that this is happening. It's really,
Okay, so
tough.
it's way, I didn't see it, so it's way out by the, or well, way out.
Yeah.
It's by them. Okay.
past the Public Works garage before you get to the
Okay.
pad. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. We're gonna see what we can do. It's probably not gonna be cheap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never is.
Nope. On a higher note, LHB submitted the Highway 61 project to the American Public Works Association Minnesota chapter for consideration for an award, and it was selected as the 2023 Project of the Year in the Outstate category. So, that's great.
Is there any money with that?
No money. Um,
Fix a water main?
There is, however, an award presentation and an ask for us to be a part of a presentation at the conference
Oh.
as a session. So we actually have to talk about our project, which they didn't mention that before they asked me if they could apply. But I think it sounds great. I appreciate them doing
Yeah.
that. It's not something that comes natural to me to go out and look for awards, and so I'm glad that they're doing it. And I'm also glad that the project's recognized for some of the cool things that happened. Particularly, I think, the public involvement in the planning of it that was so heavy is one of the reasons why it gets recognized. And that's just nice to see.
Or do we get some trees replanted?
I think we
Do we get
did.
trees out
yes.
there?
Yeah, they did last
We did.
week. I saw a pickup truck digging up and putting new ones in on the right side of the highway.
Yep.
Okay.
I think they went, I don't know how many they did.
I don't either, because they didn't tell me.
I know at least I saw 3 or 4 in the back of the truck, but that was after they,
I think there was more like a dozen, and
There was quite a few, yeah.
But I don't know. We'll have to do our own investigation, I guess.
okay.
Finally, I'll be attending the Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Association annual meeting tomorrow in Bloomington. The October meeting is always their annual meeting. They have a conference-style presentations in the afternoon, and then the following day, their regular monthly meeting. And in the October meeting is when they talk about rate setting, so it's a good one to go to. Shane and I
Yeah.
both will be attending.
Cool. Did you see, I sent you guys that article about Vermont?
I did. That was pretty cool. Also of a scale that was significantly larger than all of us combined
In Cook County?
in SIMPA.
Oh, right. That's kind of cool. So Vermont, kind of like us, you know, with all the storms and whatever, they said it's just too much money to put these lines in, and then we have storms, and then we're clearing land all the time, whatever. So they've already been leasing people batteries in their homes, so they can kind of have some backup when things go down. So now they're asking, as part of their official plan, to sell or have people own batteries in their homes, and they're going to also put a focus on burying more lines too, so they won't have those kind of issues. But yeah, so then as opposed to building these bigger grids and whatever, it'll be more, each home will be able to withstand and take care of itself, and they think that would be more efficient and actually more cost effective in the long run. So you'd have a little battery in your house to store up, and they can centralize it, control it, to make sure that they can make sure you're
Oh,
gonna.
I see. So you'd have a battery set up in your place, but they're actually managing it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Mhm. Right, so you don't have to think, oh my God, I didn't, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that was kind of a different approach to, because I just got done hearing John Twist on the radio talking about that from a different angle. Instead of having more centralized batteries or whatever they're talking about. So yeah, kind of cool. All right, we're done.
Don,
We're done, Robert. Thank
Thanks,
you very
Robert.
much.
thanks.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.